If you had to nominate one section of the law which was the most contorted, twisted part of the legal system that has the most effect on people, it would have to be family law. My guest tonight is Dr. Alex Sharah, and we're here to talk about the men's justice movement. Thank you, Alex, very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Mark, for having me.
Now, the men's justice movement, why do men need justice? Where is this going?
Well, Mark, I'm a psychiatrist and I meet people and I see the effects on people of the law. And I've seen a dramatic change. I've been in medicine now since 1960 and in psychiatry since 1968. And I've seen a dramatic change. Men now suicide 4 times more than women. When I graduated, they suicided 2 times more. The difference now is that we have the Family Law Act, and men are deprived of their families and their children. And as it so happens, men also love their children just like women do.
So you're saying there's a direct causal link between suicide and the jump, 100% jump in the time you've been practicing, and the Family Law Act?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not only just the Family Law Act itself, but it's the flow on from that. The police now operate in a completely different way to when I graduated. Then if there was a domestic, the police would mostly ignore it, even though that was wrong, because often the woman got a very poor show. Now, the woman doesn't have to have anything wrong. The police will come in and the man will be put out. If there's a domestic, the routine procedure is that the man must leave. It doesn't matter where he goes. Not like women, there are lots of support agencies for women. But now...
So to begin with, just looking at that, in 2 pieces, there's a presumption of guilt, isn't there? There's a presumption of guilt. When police go to a domestic violence situation, the presumption is the man must have done the wrong thing to start with.
Well, what the situation with this family law, Mark, is that now women are not held accountable even when they lie outright and they're found outright. There is no punishment for that. They can say anything, and they do say things, and people act on it. For instance, that there is some sexual misdemeanour or some violence, and neither of those may have taken place. No proof is required, and the man, on the assumption that that's true, will be limited to not seeing their child, or seeing them in such a terrible manner, such as 1 hour a month on a supervised visit. Men will pay a fortune to try and keep some contact with their children. And if the court eventually allows the woman allows the man to see his children, if the woman decides that she doesn't want to cooperate, there's no force brought to her to make her cooperate with that at all.
Alex, I once knew a woman who claimed her ex-husband had sexually interfered with their infant child merely to get custody of the child. She made it known to those around her that it was a lie, but it worked. It worked.
It doesn't work. The solicitors...
That was terrifying.
Well, the lawyers tell them what to say if they want to win their case. It's an outright injustice. It seems now this men's justice movement isn't just for men. Admittedly, men are being discriminated against in a very, very broad sense. In education, men now aren't reaching their normal potential. More than 70% of cases in the university now are with women.
But what about boys, though? Is that something that starts at a childhood level?
It definitely starts with the school. Boys are falling through the cracks, wagging school, giving up. There's something wrong in the education that boys aren't reaching their potential now.
What do you think it is, though? Can you actually put your finger on it and say why are boys falling behind?
Well, I'd have to say I think that there's definite discrimination against boys and bias in favour of the girl in such a way that boys don't feel that they are really valued or that. They always put in a subservient role. You'll see it in the various plays and activities that the school do. You'll see the boy subservient to the girl. I think this co-education is very dangerous for boys. There are a lot of factors that could come into it, but certainly that's one of the factors.
But what you're saying, Alex, if we went back 50 or 100 years ago, I could change all the words you're saying, and where you put man or boy, I could say woman or girl.
No, I don't think so.
Well, because that was a situation there where women were discriminated against.
No, they weren't discriminated against. They had the choice. It wasn't the culture.
They were. Alex, they weren't paid the same wages. They were paid a fraction of the male wage. They were subservient. So you're saying they weren't?
Well, in that regard, but that was because in those days, the man was the breadwinner for the family, and he had a duty to make money enough for his children and wife as well. Now everything has changed, as you know. But it's more than just education. It also applies to men in employment. There are more women in employment now than men.
More women work than men work in the workforce.
More women.
So I never knew that. I had no idea.
You would think
that statistic.
You would think that motherhood wasn't a career in itself. But children don't come home and say, "Hi, Mum," now. It's as if Mum doesn't count. And the difference between a family where the mother's there and feels supported by her husband or her partner is totally different to the single-parent units, which are proliferating now at an enormously fast rate due to the terrible action of the Family Law Act, which not only legally brings about this, but also brings about it culturally, so that it becomes an accepted norm that there are these single-parent units, and that's an accepted state, and it's terrible for the children. It's not good for the mother or the father either.
But going back to what you were saying, Alex, about a woman, her role in the home not being valued, is that, and this is my take on this, it's because you can't quantify the value of being a mother, of being a homemaker. And these days, everything is about money. If you can't put a figure on it and say, I pull in X grand a year, you're considered worthless.
Well, why, Mark, is there such a emphasis on giving women paid parental leave, but there's no emphasis on rewarding the woman who stays at home to mind her family? And a woman who stays at home to mind her family is someone who's more likely to have children who can succeed in their studies, not get into crime, reach their potential, have a career, and possibly go on to have good relationships later. It's found that in those families where the father isn't present, that they don't have good relationships later. They break down soon.
So you're saying there's a structural problem. It really is, society, I guess, is out of balance to a large extent.
Very much out of balance. How it's got to this stage, and it's been engineered. It's not just here. This is happening in all the Western countries.
Okay, well, who's engineered it? That's the question.
It's coming through the United Nations. It's definitely something that's not just that someone comes up with the idea, oh, it's a good idea to have this particular law. This goes round the world. These things aren't just happening.
Well, if it's engineered, why? What is the agenda, I guess?
Well, I'd have to say that it's part of my idea of it, anyhow, the new world that they're trying to bring in, which is one in which fathers don't count. They're not there, especially the biological father. And whether or not the mother counts. She counts at the moment, but whether she'll count for long when it suits the powers that be to take power off her, I would doubt whether or not she'll also keep her power later. These people have an agenda to change the whole structure of society.
They seem to be winning. If I follow your argument and your line through, they're obviously winning.
They are winning at the moment because